Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the horizon's edge, watching the stars through the wide window. The ship had been his home for 3 years now, exploring the outer edges of human space. He was tired, but happy. Today was supposed to be just another day of checking solar systems and mapping new planets. Then the communication system made a sound he had never heard before. "Captain," said Lieutenant Amy Parker, the ship's communication officer. Her voice was shaking. "You need to see this." Jake walked over to her station. On the screen was a message, but it was not like any message they had ever received. The words were in perfect English, but they came from somewhere far beyond any human settlement. "What is it?" Jake asked. "It's a transmission from the Galactic Center," Amy said. "But that's impossible. No human ship has ever gone that far." Jake read the message on the screen. It was simple and direct. "Greetings to the people of Earth. We are the Galactic Assembly. We have watched your species for many years. You have shown qualities that interest us. We invite you to send one representative to our central station. The coordinates are attached. We await your response." Jake stared at the message. His heart was beating fast. This was first contact. After all these years of wondering if humans were alone in the universe, they finally had an answer. "Run every test you can on this message," Jake told Amy. "I want to know if it's real." While Amy worked, Jake called Earth. The message would take hours to reach the planet, but he had to report this immediately. He recorded everything they knew and sent it to Admiral Lisa Carter at Deep Space Command. Hours passed. The tests showed that the message was real. It had come from the Galactic Center, traveling faster than light through some method humans did not understand. The coordinates pointed to a star system over 2,000 light-years away. Finally, a response came from Earth. Admiral Carter's voice filled the bridge. "Captain Morrison, return to Earth immediately. This is now a matter of planetary security." The journey back to Earth took 2 weeks. During that time, Jake could not stop thinking about the message. Who were these aliens? How long had they been watching humans? What did they want? When the horizon's edge arrived at Earth, Jake was ordered to report to Deep Space Command headquarters. Immediately, he found himself in a room full of the most important people on the planet. Admiral Carter sat at the head of the table. She was a tough woman who had spent 30 years in space. Next to her was Dr. Alex Bennett, Earth's best scientist, when it came to the possibility of alien life. On the other side sat Commander Kate Sullivan, head of Earth's military space operations. "Captain Morrison," Admiral Carter began, "tell us everything about this message." Jake repeated the story. When he finished, the room was quiet for a long moment. Dr. Bennett spoke first. "This is the most important moment in human history. We are not alone. There is an entire galactic civilization out there. Or it's a trap," Commander Sullivan said. "Think about it. They say they've been watching us for years. What if they're planning to attack? What if this invitation is just a way to get us to lower our guard?" "We can't assume they're hostile," Dr. Bennett replied. "This could be the greatest opportunity humanity has ever had. Think of what we could learn from them." Admiral Carter held up her hand for silence. "Let's look at what we know. They found us before we found them. They have technology that can send messages faster than light. They know our language perfectly, and they've been watching us." "That last part worries me," Commander Sullivan said. "If they've been watching us, they know about our wars, our weapons, our military capabilities. They know everything about us, but we know nothing about them." "The message mentioned that we have qualities that interest them," Jake said. "What do you think that means?" "Could be anything," Dr. Bennett said. "Maybe they're interested in our creativity, our determination, our ability to survive in difficult conditions, or maybe they're interested in our ability to fight, Commander," Sullivan added darkly. Admiral Carter looked at the message again. "The coordinates they gave us point to a star system in the Kepler 442 region. That's over 2,000 light-years away. Even with our fastest ships, it would take months to get there. And that's assuming we can trust the coordinates, Commander, Sullivan said. What if it's a trap? What if we send a ship there, and it never comes back? We have to take that risk, Dr. Bennett said. This is too important to ignore. Jake listened to the debate. He understood both sides. This could be humanity's greatest moment, or its greatest mistake. But he also knew that humans had always been explorers. They had always reached for the unknown. Admiral, Jake said, if you decide to send someone, I volunteer to go. Admiral Carter looked at him. Captain, this would be the most dangerous mission in human history. You might not come back. I understand, Jake said. But someone has to go. And I've been thinking about this since we got the message. If these aliens wanted to hurt us, they probably could have done it already. They have technology we can't imagine. If they wanted to destroy us, they wouldn't need to trick us with a fake invitation. The room was quiet again. Finally, Admiral Carter spoke. We'll need to prepare. If we're going to do this, we need to upgrade your ship and plan for every possibility. Dr. Bennett, I want you to prepare everything we know about possible alien contact. Commander Sullivan, I want security protocols for first contact situations. And if they're hostile, Commander Sullivan asked, then Captain Morrison will be humanity's first and last ambassador to the stars, Admiral Carter said grimly. Jake felt a chill run down his spine, but he also felt excitement. After all these years of wondering if humans were alone in the universe, they were about to find out, and he would be the first human to meet an alien face to face. The meeting continued for hours. Plans were made, preparations were discussed, and protocols were established. But Jake's mind kept returning to the simple message that had started. At all, we have watched your species for many years. What had they seen? What did they think of humanity? And what did they want? Soon, Jake would find out. 3 months later, Jake stood in the upgraded Horizon's Edge as it prepared to leave Earth's solar system. The ship was different now. Earth's best engineers had worked day and night to add new systems, better shields, and more powerful engines. But even with all these improvements, the journey to the Galactic Center would take 4 months. Dr. Bennett had given Jake hundreds of files to study during the trip. The files contained everything humans knew about possible alien life, different types of planets, and theories about how advanced civilizations might work. Jake spent his days reading and trying to prepare for something no human had ever done before. Captain, said Lieutenant Amy Parker, who had volunteered to come with him, we're ready to jump to faster than light speed. Do it, Jake said. The stars outside the window stretched into lines of light, and then they were traveling faster than light, heading toward the unknown. The journey was long and sometimes boring. Jake read files and studied star maps. He practiced different ways to greet aliens and thought about what he would say when he met them. Sometimes he wondered if he was making a huge mistake, but every time he had those thoughts, he remembered the message. The aliens had reached out to humans first. That had to mean something good. 2 months into the journey, Jake was in his cabin when Amy's voice came over the communication system. Captain, you need to see this. Jake hurried to the bridge. Amy was staring at her screen with wide eyes. What is it? Jake asked. We're picking up signals, Amy said. Lots of them. They're coming from the direction we're heading. Jake looked at the screen. There were dozens of different signals, all using different methods to communicate. Some were radio waves, others were laser pulses, and some were types of signals that human technology could barely detect. Can you understand any of them? Jake asked. Some of them, Amy said. A few are in languages I don't recognize, but the computer is starting to figure out patterns. And Captain, some of these signals are incredibly complex. They're far more advanced than anything we've ever seen. Jake felt his heart beating faster. They were getting close. Over the next 2 months, the signals became stronger and more numerous. Jake and Amy listened to what they could understand. Most of it was routine communication, ships reporting their positions, traders discussing business, and what seemed like regular news broadcasts. But it was all alien. Jake was listening to the everyday conversations of civilizations that had existed for thousands of years. Finally, their destination appeared on the long-range sensors. "Captain," Amy said, her voice barely a whisper. "You need to see this." Jake looked at the main screen and felt his jaw drop. In front of them was a structure so large it seemed impossible. It was a space station, but it was bigger than Earth's. Moon, it was made of materials that gleamed like metal and crystal, and it was surrounded by thousands of ships of all different shapes and sizes. "How is that thing even possible?" Amy asked. "I don't know," Jake said. "But we're about to find out." As the horizon's edge got closer, Jake's communication system activated. A voice spoke in perfect English, but it had a strange, musical quality. "Human vessel, you are expected. Please follow the guidance signals to docking bay 774. Jake looked at Amy. "Here we go." Following the signals, they flew toward the massive station. As they got closer, Jake could see that the station was even more incredible than he had first thought. There were sections that seemed to be made of living crystal, others that looked like they were built from some kind of metal that changed color as he watched. Ships from dozens of different species were docked at various points around the station. "Captain," Amy said, "I'm reading atmosphere in the docking bay. It's the same as Earth's atmosphere." "They know what we need to breathe," Jake said. "They really have been watching us." The horizon's edge landed in a docking bay that was large enough to hold 100 ships their size. As soon as they touched down, Jake saw movement outside the window. 3 figures were walking toward their ship. Jake's heart stopped. These were the first aliens he had ever seen. The first figure was tall and thin, with skin that looked like it was made of pale blue crystal. It moved gracefully, almost like it was floating. The second figure was shorter and wider, with dark, green skin and 4 arms. The third figure was the most human-like, but its skin was silver, and its eyes were completely black. "They're beautiful," Amy whispered. Jake activated the ship's external communication system. "This is Captain Jake Morrison, of Earth. We received your invitation." The crystal-like figure spoke, and its voice was the same musical one they had heard earlier. "Welcome, Captain Morrison. I am Zeralyn of the Velthani. We are honored by your arrival. Please, come with us. The assembly is eager to meet you." Jake and Amy put on their best uniforms and checked their equipment one more time. Jake carried a small device that would record everything they saw and heard. This moment would be studied by humans for generations. They opened the ship's door and stepped onto the alien station. The first thing Jake noticed was the air. It smelled different. Not bad, just different. There was a faint scent of something, like flowers mixed with ozone. The second thing he noticed was the gravity. It felt exactly like Earth's gravity, which seemed impossible. How could a space station this large have artificial gravity that felt so natural? Zeralyn approached them. Up close, Jake could see that the alien's crystal-like skin was actually made of tiny, moving pieces that shifted and changed color slightly as they moved. "Captain Morrison," Zeralyn said, "we have prepared quarters for you and your companion. The assembly session will begin in 3 of your days. This will give you time to rest and prepare." "Thank you," Jake said. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course. How long have you been watching us?" Zeralyn's skin shifted to a darker blue color. "Your species has been observed since you first left your home planet. We have watched your progress with great interest." "Why?" Jake asked. "Because you are unique," Zeralyn said. "You will understand more when you meet the assembly. For now, please rest. Tomorrow, we will show you our station and explain how our society works." As they walked through the corridors of the station, Jake saw dozens of different alien species. Some were similar to the 3 he had already met, others were completely different. He saw creatures that looked like walking trees, others that seemed to be made of living metal, and some that were so strange he couldn't even figure out what they were. But all of them stopped and stared at Jake and Amy as they passed. Jake realized that they were just as curious about humans as he was about them. Their quarters were comfortable and designed for human needs. There were beds, a food preparation area, and even entertainment systems. But Jake couldn't relax. His mind was racing with questions. Why were humans unique? What made them different from all these other species? And what did the assembly want from them? As Jake lay in bed that night, looking out at the stars through the window of his quarters, he thought about Earth. By now, everyone on the planet knew where he was and what he was doing. The whole human race was waiting to hear what he would discover. He thought about the message that had started all of this. We have watched your species for many years. You have shown qualities that interest us. Tomorrow, he would find out what those qualities were, and he would learn what it meant to be human in a galaxy full of alien civilizations. But for now, he just stared at the stars and wondered what tomorrow would bring. Jake woke up to the sound of soft music playing in his quarters. Through the window, he could see the incredible view of space around the massive station. Ships of all sizes and shapes moved between the different sections of the station like a carefully organized dance. A gentle knock came at his door. When Jake opened it, he found Zerilyn waiting outside. "Good morning, Captain Morrison," the Velthani said. "Did you rest well?" "Yes, thank you," Jake said. "The quarters are perfect. We are pleased. Today, we will show you our station and explain how the assembly works. Are you ready?" Jake nodded and followed Zerilyn into the corridor. Amy joined them, carrying her recording equipment. As they walked, Zerilyn explained the station. "This is Assembly Central. It was built over 2,000 years ago by the combined efforts of 47 different species. It serves as the center of government for our part of the galaxy." "How many species are part of the assembly?" Jake asked. "Currently, we have representatives from 138 different worlds and species," Zerilyn said. "Each species brings something unique to our community." They entered a large room with windows that showed the inside of the station. Jake was amazed at what he saw. The station was like a city in space, with different sections for different species. Some areas had thick, green atmosphere for plant-like creatures. Others had low gravity for species that preferred to float. There were even sections filled with water for aquatic aliens. "This is incredible," Amy said. "How do you manage to keep all these different environments stable?" "Technology and cooperation," Zerilyn said. "Every species contributes their knowledge and skills. Together, we can accomplish things that no single species could do alone." They continued their tour, visiting different sections of the station. Jake met aliens that communicated through color changes, others that spoke in musical tones, and some that used complex hand gestures. Despite their differences, they all seemed to work together peacefully. "Zerilyn," Jake said, "can I ask you something personal?" "Of course. What do you think of humans? What makes us unique?" Zerilyn's crystal skin shifted to a thoughtful purple color. "That is a question the assembly has debated for many years. Your species is ... interesting. You are young, but you have spread across many worlds quickly. You are curious about everything, and you have a quality that is rare in young species." "What quality?" "You ask difficult questions," Zerilyn said. "Most young species are concerned only with themselves. But humans ask questions about right and wrong, about their place in the universe, about their responsibility to others. This is unusual." Jake thought about this as they continued walking. They passed through a section where the walls were covered in what looked like living art that moved and changed colors. In another section, Jake saw aliens working on technology that seemed to bend the laws of physics. Finally, they reached the most important part of the station, the assembly hall. Jake stopped walking when he saw it. The hall was enormous, with a domed ceiling that showed a perfect view of the stars. The walls were made of some kind of material that seemed to glow with its own light, and in the center of the hall were hundreds of seats arranged in a perfect circle. But Jake noticed something strange. In the very center of the circle, surrounded by all the other seats, was one seat that was empty. It was beautiful, made of what looked like silver and gold, but no one was sitting in it. Jake said, "Why is that seat empty?" Zaralyn's skin turned a dark blue color, and she was quiet for a long moment. "That seat belongs to the architects," she finally said. "The architects. They were the most advanced species the galaxy has ever known. They built many of the technologies we still use today. They could move stars, create new worlds, and travel between dimensions. They were the leaders of the early assembly." "Where are they now?" Amy asked. "They are gone," Zaralyn said. 3,000 years ago, they disappeared. One day they were here, the next day they were gone. All of them, everywhere in the galaxy. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. "What happened to them?" "We do not know," Zaralyn said. "They left behind some of their technology, but most of it stopped working after they disappeared. They also left behind warnings." "What kind of warnings?" "Automated messages, hidden in space throughout the galaxy. Our ships still find them sometimes. They all say the same thing." Jake waited, but Zaralyn seemed reluctant to continue. "What do they say?" Jake asked. "When the young species reaches for the stars, with weapons before wisdom, the silence will claim them as it claimed us." Zaralyn said quietly. The three of them stood in silence for a moment, looking at the empty seat. "Is that why you invited us here?" Jake asked. "Because you're worried about humans." "Partly," Zaralyn admitted. "Your species has great potential, but you also have great capacity for destruction. We have watched your wars, your weapons, your conflicts. We have seen species like yours before. What happened to them? Some learned wisdom and joined us. Others," Zaralyn's skin turned almost black. "Others followed the same path as the architects." Jake stared at the empty seat. "You think we might disappear too?" "We hope not," Zaralyn said. "That is why we invited you here. The assembly will decide if humans are ready to join the galactic community, and if we're not ready, then you will be left alone to find your own path. But Captain Morrison, you should know that the assembly has been watching many young species. Most of them are not invited here. The fact that you are here means we believe you have hope." They spent the rest of the day touring the station and meeting different alien species. Jake learned that the assembly was not just a government, but a community of species that had learned to work together. They shared technology, knowledge, and resources. They helped each other solve problems and explore new parts of the galaxy. But everywhere Jake went, he thought about the empty seat and the architect's warning. He noticed that many of the aliens he met seemed to be studying him, watching his reactions to everything he saw. That evening, Jake and Amy sat in their quarters, reviewing the day's recordings. "Amy," Jake said, "what do you think about all this?" "It's incredible," Amy said, "but also scary. If the most advanced species in the galaxy could just disappear, what does that mean for us?" "I keep thinking about that warning," Jake said. "Weapons before wisdom. Look at human history, Amy. We've been fighting wars for thousands of years. We've built weapons that could destroy our entire planet. Are we the kind of species that reaches for the stars with weapons before wisdom?" Amy was quiet for a moment. "Maybe," she said, "but we're also the kind of species that reaches for the stars at all. How many other species do that?" "The architects did," Jake said. "And look what happened to them." "But we don't know what happened to them," Amy said. "Maybe they didn't disappear. Maybe they just ... evolved into something else. Maybe they moved to another dimension or another galaxy." Jake wanted to believe that, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something terrible had happened to the architects, and he couldn't stop wondering if the same thing might happen to humans. The next day would be the assembly session, where Jake would formally meet all the member species. He would give a speech about humanity and answer questions about his species. And somehow, the assembly would decide if humans were ready to join the galactic community. But as Jake fell asleep that night, he kept thinking about the empty seat in the center of the assembly hall. It was beautiful, but it was also a reminder of what could happen to a species that made the wrong choices. Tomorrow, Jake would speak for all of humanity, and he would try to convince the assembly that humans were ready for wisdom, not just weapons. But first, he had to convince himself. Jake woke up early on the morning of the assembly session. His stomach was tight with nervousness. Today he would speak for all of humanity in front of the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. He had spent weeks preparing his speech, but now it seemed like nothing he could say would be good enough. Amy was already awake, checking her recording equipment one more time. "Are you ready for this?" she asked. "I don't think anyone could be ready for this," Jake said. "But I have to try." Zarelyn arrived to escort them to the assembly hall. As they walked through the corridors, Jake noticed that the station seemed quieter than usual. Many of the aliens they passed stopped to look at them, and Jake could feel their eyes following him. "Captain Morrison," Zarelyn said, "there is something I must tell you before we enter the hall." "What is it?" "The session today is not just about introducing you to the assembly. It is also a test." Jake stopped walking. "What kind of test?" "The assembly will present you with situations and questions. How you respond will help them decide if your species is ready to join our community." "Why didn't you tell me this before?" "Because we wanted to see your natural responses," Zarelyn said. "If you had known it was a test, you might have tried to give the answers you thought we wanted to hear, rather than the answers that represent your true nature." Jake felt a moment of anger, but then he realized that Zarelyn was right. This was about more than just one meeting. This was about determining humanity's future. They entered the assembly hall, and Jake was struck again by its beauty. The empty seat in the center seemed to glow in the light from the dome above. Hundreds of alien representatives were already seated, their attention focused on Jake as he walked to a special platform near the center of the hall. An alien that looked like a walking tree with silver bark approached the platform. When it spoke, its voice sounded like wind through leaves. "I am Elder Crix of the Korthok," it said. "I have been a member of this assembly for over 400 years. Today, we meet to evaluate the species known as humans." Jake stepped up to the platform. "Thank you for this opportunity," he said. "I am Captain Jake Morrison, representing Earth and all of humanity." "Captain Morrison," Elder Crix said, "we have been observing your species for many years. We have seen your achievements and your failures. We have watched your wars and your peace. We have seen your technology advance and your wisdom grow, but slowly." Jake nodded. "We are a young species. We make mistakes, but we learn from them." "Do you?" asked another alien, this one with blue skin and large dark eyes. "Your species has been fighting wars for thousands of years. You have created weapons that could destroy your entire world. You have polluted your planet and driven many species to extinction. What have you learned?" Jake felt the weight of the question. "We have learned that we can do better. We have learned that we must do better. Our greatest achievements have come not from war, but from cooperation. We went to the moon by working together. We built space stations by sharing knowledge. We explored the galaxy by combining our resources. But you also went to the moon because you were competing with other humans," said a third alien, this one made of what looked like living metal. "Your space program began as a military project. Your fastest advances in technology have come from military needs." Jake paused. This was exactly what he had been afraid of. "Yes, that's true. But we also use those technologies for peaceful purposes. The same rockets that were built for war now take us to the stars. The same computers that were designed for military use Now help us communicate across the galaxy. Like the architects did, Elder Crix said quietly. The hall became silent. Jake could feel the tension in the air. Tell me about the architects, Jake said. What exactly happened to them? Elder Crix's bark-like skin rustled. The architects were the most advanced species we had ever known. They could reshape matter with their minds, travel between dimensions, and create new forms of life. They were the leaders of the early assembly, and they brought peace to a galaxy that had been torn by war. But they were also proud, said the blue-skinned alien. They believed that their advanced technology made them superior to all other species. They began to use their power to control rather than to guide. They created weapons that could destroy entire star systems, said the metal alien. They built machines that could rewrite the laws of physics. They reached for power that even they could not control. Jake felt a chill, and then they disappeared. One day, every architect in the galaxy simply vanished, Elder Crix said. Their cities became empty. Their ships stopped working. Their technology shut down. All that remained were the warning messages they had left behind. Do you think they destroyed themselves? Jake asked. We do not know, Elder Crix said. But we know that in their final messages, they expressed regret. They warned us about the danger of seeking power without wisdom, of developing weapons before developing understanding. Jake looked around the hall at all the alien faces watching him. And you think humans might make the same mistake? We have seen the signs, the blue-skinned alien said. Your species develops new weapons faster than new wisdom. You reach for the stars, but you bring your conflicts with you. You have the potential to become like the architects. But we also have the potential to become something better, Jake said. Yes, we have conflicts. Yes, we make mistakes. But we also have something that maybe the architects lost. What is that? Elder Crix asked. We doubt ourselves, Jake said. We question our own actions. We worry about whether we're doing the right thing. I've been worried about this meeting since I left Earth, wondering if humanity is ready for this moment. But maybe that doubt, that uncertainty, is exactly what we need. The hall was quiet for a long moment. Then Elder Crix spoke again. Captain Morrison, we will now present you with a scenario. Your response will help us understand how your species might react in a similar situation. Jake nodded, his heart beating fast. Imagine, Elder Crix said, that humanity has been accepted into the assembly. You have been given access to our technology, our knowledge, and our resources. But then you discover that another young species is threatening one of our member worlds. This species has primitive weapons, but they are determined to fight. How would humanity respond? Jake thought carefully. This was clearly a test, but he didn't know what the right answer was supposed to be. First, Jake said, we would try to understand why they are threatening the member world. Are they acting out of fear? Are they trying to protect something? Are they being controlled by someone else? And if you discovered that they were simply aggressive, that they wanted to conquer and destroy, asked the metal alien, then we would try to stop them, Jake said. But we would try to stop them with the minimum amount of force necessary. We would try to capture their leaders, disable their weapons, and show them that there are better ways to solve conflicts. And if that didn't work, Elder Crix asked. Jake paused. Then we would do what we had to do to protect innocent people, but we would not enjoy it. And we would always remember that we were fighting people who might have been our friends under different circumstances. Even if they were completely alien to you, even if they were nothing like humans, asked the blue-skinned alien. Especially then, Jake said, if they're completely alien to us, then we might not understand their motivations. We might be missing something important. We would want to be very careful before we decided that violence was the only solution. The aliens in the hall began to murmur to each other in their various languages. Jake couldn't understand what they were saying, but he could sense that his answers had provoked some kind of reaction. Elder Crix stood up. Captain Morrison, the assembly will now discuss your responses. Please return to your quarters. We will contact you when we have reached a decision. As Jake left the hall, he couldn't shake the feeling that he had just taken the most important test of his life, and he had no idea whether he had passed or failed. Back in his quarters, Jake sat by the window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there was Earth, where billions of people were waiting to hear what happened at this meeting. Their future might depend on what he had said today. Amy sat beside him. How do you think it went? I don't know, Jake said. I tried to be honest about what humans are like, but I'm not sure if honesty is what they wanted to hear. Maybe that's exactly what they wanted to hear, Amy said. Jake hoped she was right, but as he waited for the assembly's decision, he kept thinking about the empty seat in the center of the hall, and the warning left behind by the architects. Soon, he would know if humanity was ready to join the galactic community, or if they would be left alone to find their own path among the stars. Jake waited in his quarters for 3 days. During that time, he and Amy were not allowed to leave their rooms or communicate with Earth. The waiting was the hardest part. Jake's mind kept going over everything he had said during the assembly session, wondering if he had made the right choices. On the 3rd day, Zerilyn came to their quarters. Captain Morrison, the Velthani said, the assembly has reached a decision. Please come with me. Jake and Amy followed Zerilyn through the corridors of the station. This time, the other aliens they passed seemed to be watching them with a different kind of attention. Some nodded as they walked by, while others looked away. When they reached the assembly hall, Jake was surprised to see that not all the seats were filled. About half of the representatives were there, but the others were missing. Where is everyone? Jake asked. The assembly has split into 2 groups, Zerilyn said. Those who are here support one decision. Those who are not here support a different decision. Elder Crix stood up as Jake approached the platform. Captain Morrison, the assembly has debated your responses for 3 days. We have also received new information from our observers near your solar system. Jake's heart sank. What kind of information? Your people on Earth have been debating what to do about this meeting, Elder Crix said. We have listened to your broadcasts and monitored your communications. There are some humans who want to accept whatever terms we offer, but there are others who want to reject any limits on human expansion. That's not surprising, Jake said. Humans have always disagreed about important decisions. But Captain Morrison, said the blue-skinned alien, some of your military leaders are talking about using force if we try to limit human activities. They are discussing ways to attack this station and take our technology by force. Jake felt like he had been hit in the stomach. That's not what most humans want. Those are just a few people who are afraid. How do we know that? Asked the metal alien. How do we know that these few people will not become the leaders of your species? How do we know that humanity will not choose the path of the architects? Jake looked around the hall at all the alien faces watching him. He could see doubt in their expressions, and he understood why. If he were in their position, he might have the same doubts. Because, Jake said slowly, I'm here. The hall became quiet. Think about it, Jake continued. You sent an invitation to humanity. You could have sent it to our military leaders, or our politicians, or our scientists, but you didn't. You sent it to a ship that was exploring space, learning about new worlds. You sent it to people who were reaching for the stars out of curiosity, not conquest. And then our leaders chose to send me, not a general or a politician. They chose to send someone who explores, not someone who fights. That tells you something about what humanity really values. Elder Crix's bark-like skin rustled. But Captain Morrison, what happens when you return to Earth? What happens when the people who want to use force for expansion gain power? Then, the rest of us will stop them, Jake said. That's what humans do. We argue, we debate, we sometimes fight among ourselves. But in the end, we usually make the right choice. It might take us a while, but we get there. Usually is not always. The blue-skinned alien said, No, Jake agreed. Usually is not always, but it's better than never, and it's better than having no choice at all. Jake paused, looking around the hall. Can I ask you something? Elder Crix nodded. What happened to the species that you decided were not ready to join the assembly? The ones who chose weapons over wisdom? The hall became very quiet. Finally, Elder Crix spoke. Some of them learned wisdom eventually and joined us later. Others destroyed themselves in wars. A few expanded into space and became threats to other species. We had to limit their activities. You mean you fought them? We contained them, Elder Crix said. We prevented them from leaving their solar systems. We cut off their access to advanced technology. We left them alone to find their own path. Jake felt a chill. So if you decide that humans are not ready, you'll trap us in our solar system. If necessary, Elder Crix said. We cannot allow another species to follow the path of the architects. We cannot risk the destruction that might follow. Jake understood now. This was not just about whether humanity could join the galactic community. This was about whether humanity would be allowed to continue exploring space at all. Elder Crix, Jake said, what would it take for you to decide that humans are ready? We would need to see changes in your species, Elder Crix said. We would need to see you choose cooperation over conflict, wisdom over power, exploration over conquest. And if we agree to those changes, then you would be welcome to join us, said the blue-skinned alien. But you would be junior members for many years. You would have access to some of our technology, but not all. You would be able to explore some parts of the galaxy, but not all. You would have to prove that you can be trusted. Jake thought about this. It was not the triumphant first contact that many humans had dreamed of. It was more like being put on probation. What are the specific terms? Jake asked. Elder Crix stood up. If humanity chooses to join the assembly, you will agree to the following. No military expansion beyond your current territory. No development of weapons capable of destroying planets or star systems. No interference with other species without assembly approval. And you will allow assembly observers to monitor your activities for the next 100 years. Jake felt his stomach drop. These were serious restrictions. Many humans would see them as surrendering their freedom. And if we don't agree to these terms, Jake asked, then you will be contained within your solar system, Elder Crix said. Your ships will not be allowed to travel beyond the edge of your system. Your communications will be blocked. You will be left alone to develop as you choose, but you will not be allowed to affect other species. Jake stared at the empty seat in the center of the hall. Is that what happened to the architects? Did they refuse to accept limits? The architects were never offered limits, Elder Crix said. They were the most advanced species we had ever known. We thought they were beyond the need for such restrictions. We were wrong. So the empty seat is not just a memorial, Jake said. It's a warning. Yes, Elder Crix said. It reminds us that even the most advanced species can make the wrong choices. Jake looked around the hall at all the alien representatives. Some of them looked hopeful, others looked doubtful. All of them looked like they were waiting for him to make a choice that would affect the future of humanity. I need to communicate with Earth, Jake said. This decision is too important for me to make alone. We understand, Elder Crix said. You have 1 week to discuss this with your people. After that, you must give us an answer. Jake nodded and left the hall with Amy and Zerilyn. As they walked back to their quarters, Amy was quiet. What are you thinking? Jake asked her. I'm thinking about that empty seat, Amy said. I'm thinking about what it means that the most advanced species in the galaxy just disappeared one day. What do you think it means? I think it means that intelligence is not the same as wisdom, Amy said. And I think it means that power without limits is dangerous, no matter who has it. That night, Jake sent a long message to Earth, explaining everything that had happened and describing the choice that humanity faced. Then he sat by the window and looked out at the stars. wondering what his species would decide. The next few days would determine whether humanity would join the galactic community as a junior member, or be left alone to find their own path among the stars. Either way, Jake knew that humanity would never be the same. The empty seat in the assembly hall had taught him that even the most advanced civilizations could make mistakes. The question now was whether humanity would learn from those mistakes, or repeat them. As Jake waited for Earth's response, he thought about the warning left behind by the architects. When the young species reaches for the stars with weapons, before wisdom, the silence will claim them as it claimed us. Soon, humanity would choose between weapons and wisdom, and Jake would have to live with the consequences of that choice for the rest of his life. The stars outside his window offered no answers, only questions. But Jake knew that questions were better than silence, and he hoped that his species would choose to keep asking them, no matter what path they chose to follow among the stars.